Remember, this is where we translate our words into action, and where success is ours for the taking. This is another inspirational interview. And I have two brothers here who are learned brothers. And they're going to open our eyes to a wonderful, inspirational African American community called the Gullah Geechee, who live primarily in the states of Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and northern Florida. And they can trace their immediate lineage. Today, they can trace their lineage from here in the United States to the west coast of Africa, and very specifically to Sierra Leone. This is going to be a truly inspirational podcast, and I need you all to listen carefully. So, I'm going to begin first of all. I've got a good friend of mine here, a truly inspired brother, if I may say so, and that's Abu Akil. Abu, please introduce yourself. Say a little bit about yourself for the audience, but I also then want you to introduce our learned guest. That will be clearer to the audience in a moment. Abu, please introduce yourself.
Greetings, the motivator. So I'm
Hi.
Abu Akil. I'm a trustee of the Global African Congress UK. I'm totally committed to the agenda around African upliftment and now repairing ourselves and changing our relationship to the planet. I met Brother Amadu in Trinidad, Emancipation
Ooh.
Day in
Ooh.
Trinidad, the
Wow.
Emancipation Support Committee.
Okay.
That committee, one of the members of the committee hosted us both in the same household. So we were living like brothers in a household in Trinidad,
Uh-huh.
and we formed quite a strong bond. At that time, one of the things that connected us was around how CARICOM, the
Mhm.
AU, and CPAN were devising a 12-point plan of action around us acquiring and developing ourselves as Africans and forwarding our history. So Amadu's perspective on it was around making sure that the connections between Africans in Trinidad and
Mhm.
Africans in Sierra Leone was cemented. So some of the things that he brought very clearly into my psyche was the concept of the Americans. And they were present in Trinidad at the time, but I don't want to digress. So, Brother Amadou has always also been making me much more aware of the importance of our language. So, one of the things that we did in Trinidad, he connected me with people who were engaging in sustainable African agricultural practices
Mhm.
in southern Trinidad. And one of the things that they made very clear to me was that I need to speak in my native tongue, the
Ooh.
Jamaican tongue. So
Yes,
speaking the
absolutely.
English way, they said, this isn't going to work down here in Trinidad. You need to speak with your native tongue of Jamaica, which was strange to me. But they said, look, you need to speak as a Jamaican down here, or people are going to deal with you strangely. So yes, what I
I
ever
like
do, and
that.
he's
I
told
like
me to
that.
that.
Oh, wow, that's powerful. And if I may, Abu, just to pick up on that, so that's truly a culturally centered event, okay, and uh, and therefore being able to speak our birth tongue, as it were, must have been truly liberating, huh?
It
Would you
was
agree?
for me. It was.
Yeah.
It was. It was. At one point, it was strange on one angle because I'm in Trinidad, but on
Hmm.
the other angle, it was a relief because
Yes.
people found it much more easy to communicate. It was easier for me to communicate. And
Hmm.
again, brother Amadou constantly holds me to this,
Hmm.
and it's that whole thing about the commonality of our languages. So,
Yes.
brother Amadou being the whole Creole dialects and
Mhm.
bringing those into being, even being here in the UK, because he linked up in the UK. And I don't want to take the story too far away, but he came to
Please
the
do.
UK on a particular visit. I said, look, well, go on, all your day and you know, call me.
Mhm.
And
Hey,
we linked
good
another
job.
brother. We linked a brother from who's a Yoruba. And these
Okay,
brothers were rapping,
right.
hardcore rapping
Mhm.
in mother tongues.
Wow, wow,
So
wow.
we are deeply connected, and this is what this week.
This
Mhm.
week, this is
Yeah,
this is this is true. This is true talk, you know. And listening to you, I'm getting involved, you know, because I've got a very English accent, as you know. But given the opportunity, though, it arrives. Huh? It
yeah,
arrives, and you know that I'm a Jamaican man. Huh?
yeah, man.
Right.
Now, a question, and if I may, Abu, just go to the guest here, Amadu. Okay, because first of all, what a wonderful name. You know, what a wonderful name, first of all. But if I may, my brother, can I ask you just to say, introduce yourself, but just say a little bit about yourself so that audience can get to know you. But I just want to throw another ball into that question. Can I ask you to describe maybe a person or an event that has really inspired you and is really, as it were, part of the motor, the engine, the catalyst as to why you are the man before us today? Over to you, my brother.
Sure. Thank you very much for this
Pleasure.
opportunity.
Pleasure.
I could feel Abu Akil's, passion. I love
Oh,
it.
it's something else, isn't it? Oh,
Yes, yes.
over
So
to
my
you.
name is Amadu Massally, and I'm
Mhm,
from Sierra Leone, born and raised.
mhm,
Traveled to the United States to go to college in the early 1980s, and I've been there since. I actually moved back to Sierra Leone for 5 years, from 2009 to 2014. But I'll tell you about an event with regard to how I started this work. And
mhm.
I do believe in ancestral spirits. I'm a certified public accountant by trade, but I don't do that stuff anymore. I don't do these kinds of things
All
anymore.
right.
I just follow my passion here and try to make these connections between Africa and her diaspora, or vice versa, focusing on Sierra Leone, which is what I know more than anything else. So for me, I had watched a film called, it was a sneak preview of a film called African American Lives. And when I watched that film, I was so moved by it.
Mhm.
Uh, I had heard about the Gullah Geechees. So
Okay.
whilst I was in South Carolina where I watched the film, the next couple of guys that I saw, I asked them if they were Gullah Geechees. Here I was thinking that everyone in South Carolina must be a Gullah Geechee.
Oh,
And those
really?
guys, they were
Okay.
not really happy for me. I mean, by me assuming that, because the way they responded was like, no, man, them people down by the coast. So I didn't understand why they did that then, but apparently I found out later in my, historical escapades, if you will, that it was the way the Gaulers speak was a derogatory. I mean, even the reference to them was derogatory. Golagichis, they don't can speak English well, so people were not, if you were not Gola, you wouldn't want to assume that. That was back in 2000.
Okay.
That was back in 2006. Even some of the Golagichis, they don't speak their language in public
Right.
because they're ashamed or want to be secretive, so they don't speak their language in public easily.
Mhm.
Now, after I saw that film, um, we talked about going down there the next day, and we did. We called the guy and set up an appointment for a tour of Hilton Head Island, a Golagichi tour. This person who we called was Dr. Emery Campbell, and he had been to Sierra Leone in 1989.
Right.
I didn't know this. I left Sierra Leone in 1983 to go to the United States. We didn't hear anything about them going back home and doing this celebration. Of course, I don't think social media was as heavy as it is today. So we missed all of that. It wasn't until 2006. So imagine, it went home in 1989. 2000, that's 17 years later. I found out that they had gone to Sierra Leone whilst I was in America.
Right.
Um, but when you took us on that tour, one of the things that really moved me is that I hadn't been to my country. So this was 2000 in 23 years. After I left in 1983, I hadn't gone back to Sierra Leone.
Wow.
But on that day, when they were explaining to us that all of these beaches were owned by Gullah Geechees, now they only have two public beaches because
Mhm.
developers had grabbed all the others, with
Right.
property and then cut them off. Um, so when I went to one of the public beaches, man, I hadn't been home in 23 years, and I knew from here There is no piece of land between Sierra Leone and this spot where I am. I felt like swimming home. I
Right.
did. I was so
Yes.
young.
Yes.
Yes.
I can understand.
So it
And
was
that's your inspiration. That was your
that
inspiration.
inspiration, and that is
Mhm.
why I said some of these things are, ancestral, spiritual, ancestral spirits driven. Because I don't know. I mean, yeah, I was an accountant, certified public accountant,
Mhm.
and I was
Mhm.
able to change all of that. And I do what I do now. Here I am talking
It's
to you.
affected your life. Yes.
I
Affected
should be
your
getting
life.
ready to taxis or something. But anyway,
Mhm.
I believe that we're guided by ancestral spirits, and I'm one
Absolutely. Absolutely.
victim, for want of a better way to put it.
Yes. Yes.
So
It is.
since
It
that
is so
day,
true. Mhm.
I have just been going. 2006, just about every year to now, I haven't stopped trying to make these connections or strengthen them what we have, and then it's also spilled to the Caribbean because from my country, people were taken to Abu Akil's Jamaica,
Okay.
and
Oh, but can I, before you do that, before you go on to the where they were taken to, 'cause I'm still focused on what has inspired you. Okay.
okay,
Yeah, but it's
sure,
okay. It's okay. And
that's
this is interesting. This is really interesting. Coincidentally, and Abu Kil will laugh at this, uh, uh, whilst I've been in public life for, what, 35, 40 years, I was elected as a local councillor in 2006. Now, now, look, as I said, this is all very spiritual, and I know the ancestors want this to happen. Okay,
hmm
and there are trigger words, trigger moments here, which is powerful, which is powerful. But I just want to go back to your inspiration. But you're an accountant, and therefore you count money. Forgive me. Yep, in simple terms. Yeah. Okay. um, but money is what drives the world, as it were. Um, why would you leave what is a very secure profession, as it were? It's a profession, not a job. It's a profession, and seek and develop a career in researching your culture, your traditions, your history. Why give up all that for this? That's, if I may say so, quite a change, possibly courageous. Why? Tell us why. What's the inspiration, please?
I'm still lost with why. Because I,
I hear you. I hear
I
you.
am. I
Yeah.
mean, because I'll tell you, if you look at it from an economic perspective, I
Mhm.
used to make a six-figure income. Yeah,
Mhm.
I love
Mhm.
that. Even my wife, I don't know how she sees me these days, but you know what? I would give up for the kind of satisfaction I get from doing this work.
Yes.
I'd rather be a pauper than be a big time guy sitting behind a CPA desk. Yeah, so I don't regret it at all.
Good.
Um,
Okay.
however,
Mhm.
I would really like to make some money out of what I do, so that way
Mhm.
it's a win situation, right? If I haven't made much money at all in this work, if any.
If I may,
uh,
Amadu, and I get that. What I wanted, and for the audience to appreciate, is
yes,
your principles. You know, you are not motivated by money, by hubris. Yeah, you're
no,
motivated by sense of purpose. It's in our genes. It's in our genes. Yeah,
yeah,
we've been
it's
motivated
so fun.
through the memories of our ancestors in our genes. We're being compelled to do what we engage in. As we are, like me in this interview right now, I'm being compelled by memories of the urges in my genes are compelling me to speak with you and to seek
Yeah,
out from you a deeper understanding of what motivates you and why it's men and indeed women like yourself who are the orators, who are the recounters of our history, so that
mm,
we will create a civilization, as the great Marcus Garvey said, that will astonish the world. Okay.
yes,
So, if I
yes.
may, to take us, before taking us forward, I want to go backwards, if you don't mind. Okay. Because, of course, the Gullah Geechee, of course, are the results of the illegal chattel enslavement of our ancestors. I'm not going to say African or not. They are our ancestors, our people.
Hmm.
Um, and can you just help us along here? Because there will be members of the audience for whom this is completely new. There are members of the audience for whom they have awareness but lack of granular details, and some are very, very much aware, but will receive this information from a different perspective through your eyes, Amadou. Can I just take us back? And I have to take us back to the beginning because it always provides some useful context. So when we focus on later on the Gullah Geechee people, 14 in the 1400s and the Portuguese. Can you, for the benefit of the audience, just recite what happened? What happened between Portugal and the place we now know as Sierra Leone? Tell us. Over to
Sure.
you.
So in the 1400s,
Mhm.
people were living in my country
Mhm.
there
Yes.
for years.
For
Yeah,
centuries, for living in your country for centuries,
for
peacefully,
centuries.
generally. Yeah. There you go. There you go.
Centuries. Rice has been growing in my country, for example, by around 2500 BC, growing wild.
There you
But
go.
yeah, people were there when the Portuguese started to visit.
Mhm.
First, they would trade in goods. They would bring European goods and they'll
Mhm.
get goods
Yep.
out. Yeah. People in my country back then were skilled artisans, arts and crafts, and they would create these remarkable items that the
Yes.
Portuguese would sell in Lisbon or other
Yes.
parts. Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
and they did that for a long time. But once they saw that the demand for sugar was increasing, and Native Americans or Native Indians in the Americas were not able to work as hard to meet the market, they started to get Africans to grow sugar in the Americas, especially the Caribbean islands. So the Portuguese
Can, can,
changed it.
can I ask you at that point? Because that's an important observation. So, in other words, the Europeans in the Americas were enslaving effectively the Native Americans. Yeah,
Mhm.
but the Native Americans, because of the horrors that were being wrought on them by Europeans at the time, the conditions were absolutely degrading and, of course, death-defying, were
Yep.
dying out at a rate that meant that it was no longer productive. So
Yes.
they turned to more hardy people,
Yes.
our ancestors. Over to you, sir. Over to you.
But there was a double whammy for those native
Mhm.
Indians, because they were dying from smallpox apparently, where
Yep.
white
Brought
folks
over
were.
by Europeans. Yes.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But then when they started going to Africa, to the Americas, the Caribbean, the Africans brought some uninvited guests
Mhm.
inside of those vessels, and these were mosquitoes,
Yes.
malaria toting, yellow fever giving mosquitoes, and that wiped out the Indians even faster than smallpox. So, as the demand was increasing and labor was decreasing, they were inclined to get more and more and more Africans from the continent to these islands in the Americas
Mhm.
and beyond, because some of us were taken to South America itself. Yeah.
Yes.
So that's how it started. The need for sugar is the single most important reason for the transatlantic slave trade. Nothing beats it. All that stuff, even rice. Rice was much later. Cotton, indigo, they don't compare to sugar. This is why plantation owners in Jamaica were one of the wealthiest. Were, I mean, two or
Yes.
three times more wealthy than Americans.
Mhm.
Well, plantation owners in North America, the Jamaicans were the king, in terms of money making.
Yeah.
Um, so when these Africans started coming and more Indians were dying, some of them were actually wiped out. The whole Indian race, if you will, was wiped out on some of these islands. So Africans kept coming, you know, every year, kept increasing. if you look at the transfer of human beings, you could see that between 1700 and 1800, almost 6 million people were
Yes.
transferred.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Yeah.
And after 1807, after they abolished the slave trade, another million people were
That's right.
transferred.
Yes.
Mhm. So sugar, like I said, brought these Africans over, and we worked these plantations, and you know, the sugar was shipped back to Europe, where it was bought for European markets. Um, but it didn't end there. For Sierra Leone,
Mhm.
during the sugar plantation era,
Mhm.
not too many Africans were taken from this region. Why? Because they found out that they were rebellious,
Yeah.
so they avoided them.
Yes.
Plantation owners or slavers, enslavers, knew this, so they preferred to go to the lower Guinea coast and look for the Angolans,
Mhm.
the Congolese. I would have thought the reverse would have been true. I didn't think that my people, from the West Coast were that rebellious. But then again, if you look at one of the greatest stories of a rebellion that I know of, the Amistad Rebellion, on the
Yes. Yes.
ship, those were Sierra Leoneans.
Yes, indeed. Indeed.
That's but that's another story.
Mhm.
Now, so people from um, Sierra Leone got into the slave trade heavily when they started taking them to North America, North American colonies to grow rice, because this region was a rice growing region. In fact, I was just looking at some of my records here, if I could find it quickly. One of the first ship that got into America was to New York in 1718, I believe.
Right. Okay.
So that was, I mean, the slave trade had been going on for 200 years, since the early 1500s, before they started bringing them to the North American colonies.
Right. Right.
Most of them were going to the Caribbean,
Yes.
South America.
Yes. Yes.
There's something I want to say quickly before you
Of
ask me another
course.
question,
Of course.
and
Of
it
course.
has to do with the roots of the slave trade itself.
Mm.
So if you look, it was the wind and currents that really forced um, the American or the Caribbean side, because before these guys were just coming from Europe to Africa and doing their trade. But
Yes.
to go back, they couldn't go back directly straight like they came down. They have to go out further west and catch the winds, because they didn't have any power boats, right? It was all about wind and sails.
Hotels. Yes.
So they
Yes.
had to go towards South America and make a curve to get back to Europe. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yes, because of the.
So
Mm.
once they saw the wind forcing them to do this, these guys are smart guys. They decided to say, oh, well, here's what we can do. We can take goods to Africa, take goods, including human beings, to the Americas,
Right.
and we can bring back manufactured goods to Europe. That's a
Okay.
triangle, yeah?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
tra-
Yes.
yeah, triangular slave trade. So it was the winds that started the movement towards the Americas in terms of growing sugar and then the rice later. But that's as I say, necessity is what drives people to do certain things, right?
Absolutely.
These
Absolutely.
things
Yes. Yes.
created the triangular slave trade, and the man in Europe took advantage of that, so they could connect in each of the parts, and it made sense.
Yes. It is
Yeah.
interesting as you cite that part of the history that it started off with the Portuguese traders in the 1400s, then that attracted other European nations, including Spain, Britain, France, of course, to also trade, and that trade then translated into goods, into the chattel enslavement of our ancestors, illegal chattel enslavement. Even at the time, the nature of that enslavement was different from the slavery that you would have found on the continent. At least on the continent, you had the opportunity to redeem and become part of society. In the chattel enslavement, you were simply properties of whoever brought you, and your property for life. And that is what made it actually, even in those terms, in those days, illegal, as it was proven by the recent Brattle report that was commissioned by the University of the West Indies and the American Law Society International in 2001. So the Brattle report makes very clear that the nature of the chattel enslavement of our ancestors by the standard of the day was repugnant to the sense of humanity. In other words, illegal, to use the legal part of the time. And I'll share that report with you another time. What I want to do, if I may, now that you've sort of place some context into the illegal chattel enslavement of our ancestors and the transfer of our ancestors both to the Caribbean and to the Americas, and that's both North and South America. Brazil, of course, received the bulk of our peoples, then followed by the United States. Yeah, that's understood. And the most recalcitrant of those and resistant of those Africans were all sent to Jamaica, which is where the land of my birth, being one place where, and that's so true of most Jamaicans. We're not easy people, so that's for sure. I want to now just go back now to the United States. Clearly, you've identified the growing of sugar, rice, and cotton. I understand were the primary produce from that land. And if I just focus on the area specifically where the Gullah people communities are to be found, and I mentioned in the introduction, and that's the states of Georgia, North and South Carolina, and of course northern parts of Florida. Okay, and that will become significant in a moment. But I just want you first of all just to talk about the Gullah people, and that name is two words were paired to be
That's right.
combined
You have
with
to
it.
get it right. Otherwise,
Yeah.
my Gullah Geechee relatives will get upset with me that I
Oh,
didn't tell you
Gonna
how to
teach
say
you. Good. Okay, I'll get that right. Gonna teach you relative to D. Thank you. So, if I
it.
may, if you could, first of all, just so we understand the name, you've got the Gullah and Chichi. Okay, so just understand why there are two words, not one, to describe them. First of all, go ahead.
Sure. Well,
Mhm,
initially,
mhm.
people in South Carolina were referred to as Gullahs, and
Gullahs,
people
right.
in Georgia were referred to as Geechees.
Ah, right.
And
Okay.
we must also understand that when it comes to Gullah Geechees, South Carolina is kin. So what I mean by that is that in terms of numbers, South Carolina received more than Georgia, which is next, and lesser in Florida and North Carolina. In fact, the Gullah Geechee corridor, which is an area that stretches, I don't know, maybe 500 to 600 miles, 30 miles deep from the coast,
Mhm,
it encompasses all of South Carolina, all of Georgia, and a small portion of Florida, and there's another small portion of North Carolina.
mhm.
So the Gullah Geechee epicenter, if you will, South Carolina.
All
And
right. Okay.
it is where they started taking Africans to grow rice 60 years before Georgia. In fact, Georgia wasn't even hadn't even founded then. When in 1670s South Carolina was founded, and Africans started going there in the late 1700s. I mean, late 1600s and onwards. Now, those people who came from Angola and Congo don't have rice growing skills because
Ah,
rice is a staple there. So they didn't grow it or eat it, at least not in the same way we do in the upper Guinea coast. So Senegal, the Gambia, Guinea Bissau, Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Liberia are rice eating people. So
okay. Right.
rice growing skills had been developed for years. So on plantations in South Carolina, there was a distinction between these two groups, one who grows rice and one who doesn't, or who didn't have rice growing skills. Eventually they learned how to do it in South Carolina, but they didn't have the skills. In fact, before they went to Africa, these Europeans started. I mean, when they found out rice could grow well in the semi-tropics, they started to grow rice on their own and failed miserably. They had to bring us.
Right.
They had to
Okay.
look for us to come help them with that.
Our skills. Yes.
Our skills.
Yes.
And we brought more than just rice growing skills, but for this purpose, it's yeah, the rice growing skills and the Angolans. So for people from Angola and Congo, they will make reference to as Gola for short for Angola, Gola people, and they will make reference to those from the Upper Guinea coast as Guinea people.
Oh, that's good.
Sometimes they would say Gambia people,
Oh,
but
this is-
when you say a Guinea, if you say a Guinea person or Guinea people as a rice growing industry person, you would know right away that Guinea man grows rice. Gullah man doesn't necessarily, grow rice. They don't have those skills. So that was a distinction they'll make. People who sold rice, the who grew rice were sold at a premium. In other words, they will pay more for them because of those rice cultivating skills in both South Carolina and Georgia.
Mhm.
So, so Gola, Gola Gola is derived from those Angola people that they were making reference to.
Right. Okay.
There's a second school of thought that speaks to a particular ethnic group called the Gola people, found in Liberia and Sierra Leone. But these people were not in large numbers enough
Okay.
for their story to hold better than what I just shared about the Angolans versus the Guineans. Yeah.
Okay.
Similarly, in Georgia, the term Geechee was used to refer to these Africans who are descendants of rice growing Africans from the coast, the rice coast. So there's an Ogeechee River in Savannah where many of these Africans were working from. These plantations were they always rice plantations are always around water because you need to
Yes.
see water to make your rice grow. So the Ogeechee River was there, and they used it to help them wet the swamps, the fields. Um, so it is from that name, Ogeechee River, where I believe the term Geechee came from.
I see.
So the same Africans, I mean, let's say two
Yeah.
cousins from Sierra Leone, for example. One goes to South Carolina, they will be known as Gullah. If their cousin or even brother or sister goes to Georgia, they will be Geechee. Same person, same people,
Right.
two
Right.
different names. Eventually, when the corridor was established, they combined the names to make it Gola Geechee.
Gola
It's a
Geechee.
different for
Okay,
us
that's
too.
right. Huh?
Yeah,
Gola Geechee. Right.
it impacted us too because we've always had what we call the Sierra Leone Gola connection. It was a lot easier to say, it rhymes smoother. Now, if I say the Sierra Leone Gola connection, I'll be
Mhm.
politically incorrect. So I'll have to say the Sierra Leone Gola Geechee connection.
Gola Geechee.
Yeah,
Okay. Can I ask
but
you though? You talked about. I mentioned the states primarily where they're centred, and you mentioned used the term corridor. Is that does that have a sort of an official status? Is it recognised at a federal level in the United States? Tell us more.
yes, it's
Tell us more, please. Yeah.
it's a federal commission.
Uh-huh.
It's a federal
Okay.
commission designated to just these people. They are the only people in North America today that such designation had been given to, such a corridor. It's different from the Indian reservations.
All
Yeah,
right.
an Indian reservation may be
Mm.
one piece of land
Mhm.
in Arizona, for example. It doesn't go across states.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
so this was the first one that was done for people of African descent in America.
So that's a first in itself. But what does it mean in law? Now, it establishes corridor. It's recognised at the federal level. What does that mean? Does it mean that they have a land title? Do they give them certain privileges in this area? What does it mean from the point of view of the federal government in supporting and protecting the Gullah Geechee people?
Yeah,
Mhm,
from a law perspective,
mhm.
I'm not sure it has any weight because
Okay, right.
when I look at how non-Gullahs have come into this piece of land, if you will, um, they can go in there and build buy their land and build their own properties that are
Hmm.
non-Gullah. In fact, the Gullahs feel like they're being squeezed out of their land.
Okay. Okay.
So, from a law perspective, if there was a legalities around the corridor,
Yes.
they should protect their land. In other
Yes.
words, if you know the
Yes.
Gullah, you shouldn't buy this property.
Uh-huh.
Period.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. But then again, America is a capitalist society. People argue differently. So the question comes to mind, based upon what you've asked, law, because I've never thought about it actually.
Hmm.
In terms of the law, um, could it be just a token designation? Because
Hmm.
if I can protect my land legally,
My
why even
purpose.
apportion it to be a Gullah Geechee corridor?
That's right. Yes. Uh-huh. Okay.
It's great for that, we're trying to acknowledge the culture and the people, but maybe we did more than that. Maybe
Okay.
we did more than just acknowledgement. We should
Well,
be protected in
I
our.
think we'll leave that particular thought there for the moment, and let's go
Okay.
back to the people. So you talked about two sets of Gullah peoples, one from Sierra Leone and, of course, other from Angola. Are there linguistic, cultural traditions which are similar between these people, despite the distances, that might give them a sort of similar identity?
There are,
Uh-huh.
but I want to say something. So
Okay.
because I try to be fair with my stories, because Sierra Leone arguably has shown the most evidence between these groups of people, yeah,
Yes.
in terms of our relations. But it goes beyond just Sierra Leone.
Oh, all
Those
right.
other countries that I mentioned, the rice coast countries, Senegal, Gambia, Guinea, Guinea-Bissau,
Okay.
even Ghana. Ghana has influence, Nigeria. So I just want to give a shout out to the others that we understand that it's all inclusive.
So that's
However,
most of West Africa, in other words, most of West Africa, in effect, you
yes,
describe. Yes. Okay.
yes.
Okay.
But Sierra Leone is a little different, and we've talked about it somewhat. The two-way connection and these practical evidence that I'm going to share with you now, based on your
Please.
question.
Yes. Please. Please.
Linguistically, linguistically, the Gullah language is a Creole language.
Uh-huh.
So I have a friend called Dr. Ian Hancock, who's a linguist. He's British, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah, he has a he has a knighthood. He's a gypsy guy,
All
gypsy.
right. He's a
Yes,
member of the British Empire, in other words. But
right.
anyway, we won't go there on that one.
He
So,
is. He's a knight. All right. So Ian Hancock had studied about 20 to 30 Creole languages,
all
and then
right.
he made the deduction that the two most similar are Sierra Leone's Creole and Gullah Geechee's Gullah language. They're the two
Hmm.
most of the 30 odd Creole languages that he had studied. So Lorenzo Turner also saw many, many, many words out of the 4,000 African words.
Yes.
Out of the 4,000 African words,
Yes. Go ahead. Yeah. I've given you center
1,000
stage now.
is just me on the stage now.
Yes, it is. We're looking just at you now.
Oh,
Go ahead.
it's wonderful. I was wondering what happened. Okay, so the point I was trying to make was the language,
Mhm,
right? I'm saying
mhm.
out of the 4,000 African words found in the Gullah language, 1,000 of them are attributed to Sierra Leonean languages,
Okay.
Mende particularly, and Vai.
Right.
So
So, and just to be clear, then, so I recognise, and whenever talking about Africa, I recognise that I've always got to be conscious that within each of these languages there are many ethnic groupings. Are you aware of the ethnic groupings that make up the Gullah peoples, as it were? Mhm.
yeah, I mean, from from Guinea, for example, the Fulani people and the
Yes.
Soso people,
Uh-huh,
yeah.
uh-huh.
Uh, from Nigeria, we have Igbos and Yorubas.
Uh-huh. Yes.
Yeah, of course,
Uh-huh.
Sierra Leone, we have the Mendes and Vai and Temini people.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And from the Gambia, you have Wolof.
Okay.
Now, one thing I should say very quickly,
Uh-huh.
the Gullah, the Gullah Geechees are a mix of all these different countries.
Absolutely. Yes.
Similarly, Sierra Leone also is a mix of some of the same countries that
Yes.
eventually made up Gullah Geechees. So, for
Yes.
example, Guineans and
Right.
Liberians
Right.
moved into Sierra Leone. people from Guinea-Bissau, the Balanta people moved into Sierra Leone. So
Yes.
we also had this mix before they became Gullah Geechees.
Uh-huh.
There was such a mix also in Sierra Leone.
Yes.
So similarly, the languages came together to form what we could now know as Creole language,
Indeed.
has
Yes.
English in it, but it's mixed in with Temini words or Mende words, even Portuguese words. Mhm.
Yes. Of course. Of
So
course.
yes, there is this mix. Now I want to just point to a couple of things that so we can get a perspective of the relationship between languages. So for
Okay.
Sierra Leone, especially,
Please. Please.
and
Yes. Mhm.
I'd mentioned earlier that the longest text in an African language
Uh-huh.
passed down in a family is in the Mende language of Sierra Leone.
Mende language. Okay. That's interesting. Okay.
Yes,
And the name of that text?
it's a song.
Uh-huh.
It's
Okay.
a song. It's a funeral dirge.
Ooh. Okay.
I
Um,
don't know how to sing it, but I have it. I know the words.
uh, okay.
Yes.
And I must say, is there a place where we can hear it being sung?
Yeah. The film again, the language Ukraine. I also have it on I have it on audio.
You
But yeah,
do.
if you go to the
Okay.
film, the language Ukraine is about 52, 55 minutes long.
Okay.
In there, the song is sang.
All right. This is powerful stuff. This is truly powerful. Let me put myself back on the screen. That's powerful, I must say. That's a power. I shall look out for it, if I may. After this interview, I'll look out for it. I think that will
Mhm.
be quite useful. Um, so what you're doing here, you're showing many connections between the Gullah Geechee people within the that corridor in United States and the people of Sierra Leone and indeed West Africa. Okay.
Mhm.
Uh, Now that's so you're showing the obvious connections. But are you able to point to people who are alive today who can actually identify family members both in South Carolina, let's say, and Sierra Leone? Is that connection possible? I wonder.
Yes,
He's
it
smiling.
is.
Oh, now I've got to tell you, that is the missing link for many of us in the diaspora, that we're not able to immediately say that family, that grouping is our grouping. That's where we came from. Tell us
Yeah,
more, please. Now, I'm excited. I'm excited. Tell us more.
sure.
Mhm,
So two
mhm,
of the most remarkable stories that show how Africans are related to African Americans or vice
mhm,
versa
mhm.
can be found in these two stories. Yeah.
Okay.
One, Georgia, the
Uh-huh.
song I just mentioned. The
Yes.
family in Georgia, the Morans, and
The
they also have their
Morans.
the
Okay. Uh-huh.
Relaford, Moran, it's the last name.
Right.
They have relatives known as the Relafords, so Relaford.
Okay.
Their family have their families have preserved this song, which is the longest text ever recorded in an African language in the United States. To
Wow.
date,
Wow.
5 lines long,
Uh-huh.
a funeral dirge. But the point I want to make is I know the people. I go to their home. I eat dinner
Oh,
with them. I fishing with
you know
them.
them. Ah,
I know them.
oh
They
my
do exist.
gosh.
They were on a trip. The trip and in that documentary I shared with you that has been
Yes.
watched by many, many, many people in America.
Uh-huh.
Um, yeah, they went home and they were able to connect with those people.
Their
Today,
family. Their
they've built a
family.
house. The family. That's how they say it.
Wow.
They've built a house for the lady who recognized the song when the researchers went to with a tape recorder playing the song around different villages. They ran into this one lady who could sing along to the song.
Wow.
So that's their sister today. And
Can you
like I said,
imagine? Wow.
we have, yeah, they're alive and they're and they're gonna be around for a while because they have children and grandchildren and so on and so forth. So
You
we're gonna keep
you
going
realize
for
how powerful that is, Amadu, to be
to me.
able to relate, be able to say, I'm
Mhm.
my immediate family on the continent is there, and this is their name, and I can get on a plane and I could visit them. And that
Yeah,
is a privilege. I have no idea how privileged they are. I'd
yeah,
love
yeah,
to meet with them one day. Love to meet with them.
yeah. And then there's another story about a
Mhm.
10-year-old girl that was taken from Sierra Leone in 1756
Okay.
and sold in Charleston. Well, it used to be Charlestown back then, South Carolina.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Was bought by a guy named Elias Ball who owned the plantation. And she lived there until she was 65, having
Mhm.
10 children. But I say this to say that 10-year-old girl from Sierra Leone has a seventh generation descendant in Charleston, South Carolina today, who's like my sister,
Oh my
had
God.
children, Uncle Amadu. Yeah. So,
Oh, goodness.
so the history is there, but the descendants, the people, are also there, which makes it even more real, and we can identify with them. We can relate to them. We spend time with them, you know. So yeah, these are two of the most fast. I may be biased. I beg your pardon. But these are some of the most fascinating stories that show how Africans worldwide, everywhere. I've never heard of a story like that 10-year-old girl, for example,
Mhm.
without DNA, just historical evidence. And it's like
Wow.
history
Mhm.
hitting in the same place at least three times because they found slave ship records. The
Mhm.
guy who wrote a letter from Bonds Island, Sierra Leone, to his owners, saying that he had this, about 71 people on board now, and he's
Yes.
leaving Sierra Leone to return to um, South Carolina. But guess what?
Right.
That same girl on that ship, that 10-year-old girl, that ship almost never made it to America. Guess where it was going?
Where was it going?
Jamaica.
Oh, dear. Oh,
The
wow.
ship, the
Look at
Hare,
that. Uh-huh.
left Rhode Island to go to Africa to fetch Africans, captives. Yeah.
Yes.
On the way back, communicating through letters, a man named Henry Lawrence, who was only um, president of continental United States, which is like the president of America. He didn't have the same powers though, but he was working with a Scottish guy in England, right here where I'm sitting,
Right.
selling Africans for this Scottish guy, and he was receiving a 10% commission.
Wow.
Now, this
Mm.
guy, Henry Lawrence, was trying to dissuade the ship captain to bring that vessel to South Carolina and to leave it in Jamaica instead.
Oh,
So if she had gone to Jamaica, we probably would
yeah.
not have had the story today. I don't
It
know.
would have been
Maybe
very
Jamaica,
different. Yes, different. Can I,
but
if I may, Amadou, and I'm just conscious of time, can I just ask you just to give us the connection between the recounts which you've shared with us and the past president of Sierra Leone, the Joseph Sadu Moma. Just
yes.
tell me about him and what he achieved in
Well,
1988. Mhm.
Joseph Saidu Momo, when he was exposed to the historical records between us and these African Americans,
Mhm.
he was fascinated by it. And Joseph Opala,
Okay.
who is the historian who had really started this Sierra Leone Gullah connection, because he was able to see that there really is a connection beyond just trivial stuff.
Yes.
And he studied it and was able to bring up some of these things. He arranged for President Momo to visit Penn Center in 1988.
Okay.
And when President Momo visited Penn Center, something fascinating happened. He spoke Creole, Sierra Leone's Creole, to the audience,
Uh-huh.
and those
Okay.
who spoke Gullah could understand him.
Whoa. Look at that.
Yes, but what that
Thousands of
did,
miles apart.
mhm,
Oh dear.
what that did though,
Uh-huh.
is it reawakened the Gullah Geechees.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It was from that visit and their return visits to Sierra Leone
Uh-huh.
that eventually ended up to creating the creation of the Gullah Geechee corridor, which we had just talked about.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
So they came back and they went to the president. They went to James Claiborne. Claiborne is a senator from South Carolina
Oh,
to
yes.
ask for um, a pen, uh, a center, a Gullah Geechee center,
Uh-huh.
to be located somewhere in South Carolina. But Claiborne, who's a black man and from South Carolina, said,
Hmm.
"No, let's study and see where Gullah Geechees really are in this country,
Uh-huh.
and we are going to go for a corridor, not just one small center."
Uh-huh.
So they were able to create the Gullah Geechee corridor that spans 4 states and 30 miles deep from the coast.
That's how it came about. Right.
That's how we came
I
about.
understand you now. I understand you. And again, this is such a, so we put myself back on the screen. That is such an important recounting of history.
Mhm.
Can you imagine being the president of the country? You travel thousands of miles across the Atlantic and you meet people who've been disconnected from the country for how many generations, and they're
Yeah,
speaking your language.
yes.
It's so
Fascinating.
unlikely, but it happened.
Yeah.
Wow, I think that's very I know there are millions of us out here who wish that could happen to us. I
Yeah.
can tell
Well,
you.
you know what? It's possible.
Yeah,
Because let
it
me tell
is.
you something quickly
Yes,
that
of
the
course.
first group of diaspora returnees, for want
Hmm.
of a better way to put it, to West Africa was from the UK.
Right.
There was a group of people here. They were known as the Black Poor.
Hmm.
So they were African Americans. Some of them were from the islands too, but they were property, chattel slavery.
Right.
That after the American Revolutionary War, that the Brits lost, some of those Englishmen came
Mhm.
back to England with their property,
Right.
which included Africans. So they were here in London,
Mhm.
no jobs, just wasting time on the streets. And one night there was this plan where they gathered all of them up with some white ladies who were prostitutes, quote unquote,
Mhm.
and shipped to Sierra Leone.
Oh, wow.
Surprisingly, some of
Okay.
them. So about 500 Africans landed in Sierra Leone in 1787.
And back.
1787
Wow.
went back.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
They were trying to form a new colony for formerly enslaved Africans where they could return to. There's a
Right.
whole history that I mean
I,
the
mhm.
abolition movement is all involved with that kind of stuff. John Clarkson, an Englishman, beyond the 1787 group, went to Canada and brought 13 ships in which about 1,200 Africans were taken to Sierra Leone in 1792,
Right.
working with guys like William Wilberforce
Yes.
to
Yes.
accomplish these things. So yes,
That's a that's an important again recount of history. And there's another place that comes to mind as you speak about going back and forth, and the role that Bunce Island played in terms of the British enslavement of our ancestors. Well, what's so significant about Bunce Island? I think it pronounced, is it Bunce Island?
Spons Island, yes.
Yeah. Mhm. What
I
role did
think
that play? Yeah. Mhm.
I think it's the single most historic site
Okay.
in Africa for America. But also, it is important to the UK, or it should be.
Hmm.
I'll tell you why very quickly. And I'm
Please,
writing
please.
a book. I make this claim in there. Um, so, Bonds Island was being run at one time by a Scottish guy who owned the company. Well, there was three of them: Grant, Oswald, and Sargent.
Okay.
Richard Oswald was a Scottish guy who was
Mhm.
the principal owner of that company, and he had a partner in America named Henry Lawrence, who
Okay.
was the Continental Congress president at one time.
Right. Mhm.
All right, so listen to this now.
Uh-huh.
Why I say Bonds Island is the single most important place for America, especially if not even if not the UK. When America was signing the Treaty of Paris for their independence, we had four guys representing the UK in France and 4 guys representing the US. When they met in France, in Paris, the guy who led the British contingent was Richard Oswald,
All right.
the Buns Island owner or operator, right? One of the guys among the 4 on the American side was Henry Lawrence, his partner.
Right. Okay.
These 2 guys had become rich primarily trading in Africans from Buns Island. They did not have any other fortress or fort in Africa but Buns Island. It is not by coincidence that when it came to the point where America was to sign for their independence, that these 2 guys were represented. So, at first, I used to say there is an indirect claim for Sierra Leone to the Treaty of Paris, indirectly.
Okay, that would be interesting. Yes.
But today, I say directly because I've learned a whole lot more. Now, if they
Uh-huh.
had other forts along the African coast, maybe it's indirect. But this is direct. Sierra Leone was the only country that they dealt, in Africans. Yeah.
Yes.
And here they were, 2 partners. In fact, Richard Oswald, who representing England or the Brits, has been accused, or had been accused over the years historically that he made it easy for the Americans. Well, he had to because business was interrupted during the American Revolutionary War, and they
Absolutely.
wanted peace so they could
Yes.
continue to make money.
Trade. Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
So, my country, Sierra Leone, in no small way, had their hands directly now in the signing of the Treaty of Paris, based on the story I just told you, that these 2 guys were there
We're
at
responsible.
America's greatest moment in signing for their independence. It was not by coincidence that
No,
these 2 guys were
I don't believe that this is just chance. There's a reason for it to happen this way. Uh,
there.
we're drawing to a close now, and I want to provide some useful reference points for the audience, for those who want to engage in their own personal research based upon the evidence you've given today. And I know that as part of my preparation, that there was an interesting series of informative videos out there. If I get it right, um, the language Ukraine in 1998. Um,
Yes.
just tell us about that particular series of videos. And the other one, of course, is the family across the sea in
Yeah.
1991. Yeah, just tell us about those two videos.
Okay.
Mhm,
Again, family across the sea. I had
mhm,
mentioned that President Momo had visited Penn Center,
mhm,
and when the Gullah Geechees were invited and went the following year in
mhm,
1989, they made that documentary film, Family Across the Sea.
mhm, mhm.
In my biased opinion, it is one of the things that has catalyzed these movements that you see around Gullah Geechee
Right.
affairs.
Okay.
Now, many Gullah Geechees who had sort of left their culture are trying
Mm.
to come back and claiming their Gullah Geecheeness
The
today.
catalyst. Yes. Yes.
And then the language Ukraine, is that the other film you mentioned?
Mhm.
You talked about 2 films, right? The language Ukraine is the other one, or yeah. So the language Ukraine is a song, that main song we just talked about,
Right.
and his family going back home and meeting that woman that remembered the song because her great grandmother or her grandmother had been telling her that one day your family members will return and you need to know this song. I don't know how they got. I mean, I don't. It's just amazing. So that's what the second film is.
Okay.
There's a third
Aha.
called
Please.
Priscilla's Legacy. That one you can find on our website, our
Can you repeat
YouTube,
the
our
name? Could you just say the name one more time? Sorry, we didn't miss. We missed it.
Priscilla's Legacy. So Priscilla, the name with an apostrophe
Priscilla
S.
Legacy. Right.
So that's the 10-year-old girl, the story of a
Aha.
10-year-old
Right.
girl that left Sierra Leone in 1756, and her descendants are alive through historical evidence.
Look at that. Look at that.
Yeah. And then recently, we have our own film. We call it Gullah Roots. So this is when I took 50 odd African Americans, 90% of them were Gullah Geechees, to go to Sierra Leone
Mhm.
and South Carolina educational TV center group. They did a documentary film, and that film has been watched by over 260 million people in 44 states in America.
Really?
And what I thought was is that people are
Wow.
Mhm,
Why so
200.
popular, do you believe? Why is so popular?
Well, in America,
Mhm.
many African Americans are gravitating towards their African roots today. Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's connect and
It's in the
reconnect.
genes. Yes.
It's
Yes.
in the genes, and it's only
Yes.
a matter of time that people want to know where they come from in a
It's
deeper
indeed.
way.
Indeed.
So,
Indeed.
so yeah, that's part of the reason why this, and it's not going to end now. I mean, it's
No.
just going to grow. I mean,
Yes. Yes.
now I want to bring it into the UK because the UK is relevant to all of this. I mean, part of the reason why I'm here, I'm doing research on this book I'm writing, and I'm looking at the Royal African Company and Sergeant Oswald and Grant, their company. It's actually called Sergeant Oswald and Company.
Mhm.
What they did here, these guys were
Mhm.
moving the world. They
Yes.
were making policies impacting
Yes.
the entire world during
Yes.
those
This
times.
is true. Yes.
Yeah. And also from UK, I've looked at the vessels of the 36,000 vessels that have the voyages. Almost half of them came from England. The
Yes.
ships that were leaving to go to Africa to fetch enslaved Africans or captives to be taken to the Americas,
Yes.
half of them were from this country.
Oh wow.
Liverpool especially was a haven for that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
In other words, the British Crown earned a significant proportion of their revenue through our enslavement. Because many of these ships, yep, there you
Absolutely. And I make that case in this new book that's coming out because
go. Yeah,
I talk about how the slave trade um, propelled the Industrial Revolution. It's
that's
clear.
right. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, that's a direct connection. That's a direct connection. This is
Yes.
truly powerful. And I must say, once you've completed your book, okay, uh, please tell us when it's out. I'll
Hmm.
invite you back to take us through your book and to put the case as to why the audience should buy it in their droves, their hundreds of thousands, if not the millions. Because I know it'll be jam packed full of useful information, incredible references, but it'll be an account from an African perspective of our history and the relationship between Britain, Africa, and of course Caribbean and the Americas. And it be told through our eyes, through
Through
our
our African
interpretation.
eyes. Through
There you
our
go.
African
There you
eyes.
are.
Yes,
There you are. Now
yes.
then, you've provided such a stimulus here, and you can tell slightly emotional, I've got to say, to be able to identify a family who's connected to you, who are able to see their lineage on the continent as well, who are alive, not dead, they're alive. I think I'd love to meet that family. Love to meet that family.
I'll have
But
to invite you to the US. You should
I
come.
look forward to
You know
that
what?
invitation. I'm going to hold you to it.
I've also enjoyed this conversation. I don't want you to think that because I'm in the US, I have to wait till my book is done or till I get back to the UK.
Okay,
We can engage on an ongoing basis because I
we
want the world
shall.
to be here too.
We shall. We
I
shall.
want here to connect to our continent. It's
If members of the
yeah.
audience want to reach out, communicate with you, is there an email address you can share?
Yes,
Mhm.
yes. So
Would you?
so my first name Amadu period.
Yep.
My last name Massally at my organization is called Fambultik, which means family tree in Creole language, in our
Okay.
Creole. FAMBULTIK, one word, .com.
.com. Okay. What I'll do, I'll put up on the screen in a few moments. Put that on the screen. I would thank you for what has been a truly well inspirational, inspiring experience. Okay. And this is your research. You are a man with a profession. You gave it up for this work. Okay? I hear
Yeah.
you, don't worry. He gave it up for this work because it was the right thing to do. You could feel it in your heart that there are not 100, not thousands, but millions of people who want to listen, read, and engage in this history. Okay,
Yeah.
because it's so close to millions of us. Okay, and you know that as I speaking to yourself both prior to the interview and during the interview, there are feelings of real emotion. This work is so important. It's such an important piece of work, and amongst others I've encountered, but this is amongst the most important, because what you said is that there are Africans today who can connect directly with Africans on the continents. So in the Americas and in the continent, they can say, you're my cousin, you're my grandmother, you're my great grandmother.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
That's a tremendous experience. And let me tell you, that's a tremendous experience. And I'm a little emotional about that. You know what it's like. I'm reminded of a lion that's been caged for so long. As soon as the cage is open, the lion doesn't just walk out. They want, well, the cage is open. Why? But actually, you're providing us the reason why the cage is open, and we should walk through to freedom.
Absolutely.
There you are.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Amadu,
Well,
I
I
want
want
to
to thank.
thank you. An
Okay.
outstanding guest. Outstanding guest. Please, once your book is written, please come back again. We want to
Yes.
hear from you. Your work
Sure.
is important, very important to us all. And I want to congratulate you in coming here to do this research in London. I look forward to meeting you in the flesh very soon. Don't you worry, we will meet. Okay. But I want to thank you on behalf of the tens of thousands, you never know, even millions of people out there who can connect with your work and understand its importance. Thank you very much.
Thank
Long may
you.
you continue to prosper.
Thank you. No
Amen.
wonder they call you the motivator. I am motivated. You
Oh yeah, you've motivated us all by
know.
your very. Look, the work is of such importance. I cannot understate how important it is, and it's important for those who are guardians, those who are mothers and fathers. Those who are grandmothers and grandfathers. It's so important that our children learn and understand our history from our eyes, from our mouth.
Yes.
Praise
Yes.
be,
Yes.
praise be.
That's powerfully said.
Long may you
Powerfully.
continue your works. This platform is open to you at any time. Thank you so much. Good day to
Thank you.
you. Good day.
I've enjoyed this, and I
Wow.
enjoy your passion too. I you're an inspiring fella.
Oh, we can only try, but I'm going to keep saying it to you. What your work is so important. I'm unimportant. It is you that's important. Thank you. I'll let you
So,
go now. Good night. Good
all
night
right.
to you.
Thank
Good night.
you. Bye.
Wow. Wow. Is that right, people? Isn't that right? A brilliant. Isn't that right, huh? Isn't that right, people? Is that a demonstration of what is possible? What is possible? There are most probably hundreds, tens of thousands, millions of us that could, if we're able to spend the time to identify a family on the continent of Africa that is actually our direct bloodline. Oh yeah. Amadu, well done, well done, well done, well done. You can tell I recalled that earlier on, but it was such a poignant experience. I hope you'll agree with me that this was truly an inspired moment. Thank you, Amadu. Wonderful man, a wonderful man. Now, what I want to do is to help you all to understand this significance of that particular interview. Um, if you're on YouTube or Facebook, his details, his contact details are quoted. I urge you to reach out to him. He has a lot to say to us all. And if there's any lesson I've learned here, that those many were part of that illegal chattel enslavement of our ancestors, yeah, and are still suffering the consequence of that. There is hope. There is hope. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. And those of you who engage in teaching the young, those who've created facilities for the young, so they are taught our culture, our history, from our perspective, indeed from our mouths, as we say. Make contact with the National, in fact, let me put up on the screen now, with the National Association of Black Supplementary Schools, which is, of course, a network of such facilities. You may call yourself a school, a cultural centre, after-school project, or you could be connected to a church or a temple or a mosque. Okay? But you're there to teach the young culture, history themselves. Contact them, ensure that your facility is registered and therefore recorded there, so local parents, guardians, and others can make contact and send their sons and daughters, their nieces and nephews to your facility. So, of course, the National Association of Black Supplementary Schools, or NABS, their website address is www.nabss.org.uk, or their email address is info@nabss.org.uk, or indeed make contact with the Inspired Brother Near on 07958 348 558. I commend the National Association of Black Supplementary Schools, a worthwhile network for you to be in touch with. Okay, there you are. Examples of what we're doing, because reparations begin with self. We're responsible for that reparation. And of course, we want to promote peace and prosperity for all. And specifically, I will again focus on that wonderful country of Nigeria, an organization who's been in these studios on many occasions and led by the inspired Ndidi Ichirechwe. And of course, that organization, I'll put it up on the screen, is NINAS. If you wish to be a part of bringing peace and prosperity to Nigeria, I say again, peace and prosperity to Nigeria, reach out to the NINAS organization, or their website address is NINAS Voice, NINASVOICE, ninasvoice.org, or you can contact them on telephone number Nigeria 234 906 472 0016, or you can email Ninas at info@ninasvoice.org. I commend the Ninas organization as being a truly progressive organization, seeking, of course, to achieve peace and prosperity for all Nigerians, whatever configuration is ultimately decided for Nigeria. And the last very quick announcement, of course, I want to remind you of that awful hurricane that affected Jamaica and Grenada, Hurricane Beryl. Yep, a dangerous hurricane that, of course, destroyed many properties and crops. So, of course, the People's National Party UK, which is, I know it says People's National Party, is not a political party. Here in the UK, it's a social enterprise, a charitable organisation devoted to promoting the interests of Jamaicans in home and abroad. They're raising money and supporting the people on the ground in Jamaica and to a lesser extent, of course, in Grenada. If you wish to contribute so you can continue that self-repair, remember, we're responsible for self-repair. Send your donations and we will be sure it gets to the right place. Okay? The bank details, of course, NatWest Bank, sort code 600802, account number 298-61233, and the reference should read DRF Bell, in other words, Disaster Relief Fund Bell. I commend this organisation to you and the work they're doing on the ground. Repair begins with self. And I'll say in closing, each of these episodes, each of these podcasts are intended to be truly inspirational. But if in doubt, ask questions. Remember, we must ensure that when we leave here, it's a better place for our children, indeed, our children's children. Until the next strong, I remain the motivator. Because this is where we translate our words into action, and where success is ours for the taking. I now hand over to the next presenter on galaxyafui.net. Long may that next presenter continue to inspire. But for this episode, I'm now going to play the intro video, and I know and I encourage you to listen carefully to the intro video. Here we go. There we go. The Motivator Show. The internet's most inspirational podcast. Every Saturday morning from 8 to 10 a.m. The amazing Gullah Geechee community of Sierra Leone to North Carolina to Sierra Leone of North Carolina. Direct family lineage. The Motivator Show. Success is ours for the taking. Kingdoms of ancient Africa before the Great Ma'afa. Ma'afa meaning the African Holocaust. The Holocaust of chattel enslavement. The Great Disaster. The Great Tragedy. Ma'afa is a term used to refer to the centuries-long enslavement and murder of millions of Africans by white Europeans, North Americans and others. According to the Transatlantic Chattel Enslavement Database, during the era of the slave trade from 1525 to 1866, approximately 12.5 million Africans were kidnapped from Africa and sent across the Atlantic Ocean to be sold into a lifetime of enslavement, brutality, involuntary forced servitude. Magnamizi is a Swahili term which speaks to the intentionality of the African Holocaust of chattel colonial, neo-colonial enslavement. Example: the British monarch Elizabeth I believed that capturing Africans against their will be detestable and call down vengeance of heaven upon the undertakers. Yet, after seeing the huge profit available, she lent royal ships to John Hawkins, a merchant trader and later a naval administrator, was the first Englishman enslaver of Africans. Kingdoms of ancient Africa before the Great Ma'afa. The Mali Empire, a powerful West African empire from about 1235 to 1600 CE, known for its wealth, trade, and famous rulers like Mansa Musa. The Wagadu Empire, an empire in West Africa that existed from the 8th to the 11th centuries, often associated with Ghana Empire, but distinct in its earlier formation. The Kingdom of Mercuria, a Christian kingdom of Nubia, modern-day Sudan, that existed from the 4th to the 14th century, known for its resistance to Arab conquest. The Kingdom of Aksum, a powerful kingdom in modern-day Ethiopia and Eritrea, which existed from around 100 CE and continued until about the 10th century, known for its monumental obelisk and the role in early Christianity in Africa. Kingdoms of ancient Africa before the Great Ma'afa. The Gurmanant, a Berber kingdom located in what is now Libya, which existed from around 500 BCE to 700 CE and was known for its advanced irrigation systems. The Kingdom of Tekur, a West African kingdom that existed from around the 9th to the 14th century, located in what is now Senegal and Mauritania. The Kingdom of Congo, located in Central Africa, in what is now Angola and the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC. It was established around the 14th century and flourished for several centuries. The Kushite Kingdom, also known as the Kingdom of Kush, it was centered in Nubia, south of Egypt, and existed from around 1070 BCE to around 350 CE. The Kushite even ruled Egypt as the 25th dynasty. Great Zimbabwe, a kingdom in modern-day Zimbabwe, known for its impressive stone cities, flourishing between the 11th and 15th centuries. Kingdoms of ancient Africa before the Great Ma'afa. Numidia, an ancient Berber kingdom in North Africa, modern-day Algeria and Tunisia, that existed from around the 3rd century BCE to BCE 45. The Kingdom of Mabagumwa, a kingdom in modern-day South Africa that flourished between the 11th and 13th century, known for its rich trade networks and gold artifacts. The Egyptian Empire, or Old, Middle and New Kingdoms, located along the River Nile in North Africa. Ancient Egypt was one of the earliest, most powerful civilizations in history, flourishing from around 3100 BCE to 332 BCE. Punt, an ancient kingdom located in the Horn of Africa, flourishing as early as 2500 BCE. It was famous for trade with ancient Egypt. Kingdoms of ancient Africa before the Great Ma'afa. The Kingdom of Benin, located in what is now Nigeria. The Benin Kingdom was a pre-colonial African state that existed from the 11th century to the 19th century. The Nok culture, an ancient civilization that existed in modern-day Nigeria from around 1000 BCE to 300 CE, known for its terracotta sculptures. The Efe Kingdom, an ancient kingdom in southwestern Nigeria, flourishing from around the 11th to the 15th centuries, known for its sophisticated bronze and terracotta sculptures. The Marina Kingdom, a historical kingdom located in the Central Highland of Madagascar, founded in the 14th century and lasting until the 19th century. The Zulu Kingdom was founded in 1816 by Shaka Zulu, who was a highly influential leader. Shaka's military innovation and reforms transformed the Zulu tribe into a formidable warrior nation, united various Ngugi groups and expanding the kingdom's territory through conquest. The amazing Gullah Geechee community. Reparations begins with self. We're responsible for our personal reparations. the amazing Gullah Geechee community. The transatlantic slave voyage database revealed the last ship departing the Sierra Leone estuary in 1756, carrying 71 captives, who arrived at the port of Charlestown, South Carolina. Elias Ball's, Edward Ball's ancestors, purchased at least 5 young Africans that day, including Priscilla, believed to be about 10 years old at the time. At a quiet Sunday afternoon, the Polite family, Antoine, Tomlin, Faith, and Martin, embarked on a private outing. They drove from their homes in North Charleston to the museum and quickly made their way to the front desk. Guided by research assistant Darius Brown, they headed straight to the Center for Family History. Wasting no time, the Polite family approached the exhibit. Each document and relic became a portal to the past, offering glimpses into the unimaginable hardship Priscilla endured. In that room, one could imagine the long walk from a village in Sierra Leone, the harrowing Middle Passage, the brutality on the rice plantations, and Priscilla's enduring legacy through the 8 generations with Faith and Martin Polite. The atmosphere in the museum genealogy department was emotionally charged. Tomlin, Faith, and Martin, 7th and 8th generation descendants, shared their story on the wall with Antoine, who is affectionately known in Sierra Leone as Priscilla Man. When they travelled to that country in 2005, Priscilla's narrative came alive through meticulously preserved records and artifacts, enriched by the presence of her living descendants. The amazing Gullah Geechee community. Meet the Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Commission members. Look on these great Africans. The President Momo of Sierra Leone visited Penn Center, a community organization of the Gullah Geechee on the St. Helena Island in 1988. While there, Momo was able to greet the Gullahs in the Sierra Leone Creole, despite distance and time. The amazing Gullah Geechee community. The Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Corridor is a national heritage area, and it was established by the US Congress to recognize the unique culture of the Gullah Geechee people, who have traditionally resided in the coastal areas and the sea islands of North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. Visit to learn more about the Gullah Geechee people and a unique world culture. The amazing Gullah Geechee community. Their vision is one of cultural preservation, economic empowerment, and environmental stewardship. A vibrant region where the rich heritage of the Gullah Geechee people is celebrated and preserved for generations to come through sustainable development and community engagement. They seek to create opportunities that honor the unique traditions, language, art, and cuisine of the Gullah Geechee culture. The amazing Gullah Geechee community. Speak with Amadu, Massally, visionary cultural activist and author. Email amadu.massally@fambutik, FAMBULTIK.com. Telephone international 212-710-2911, or visit the Gullah Geechee community website www.gullahgeecheecorridor.org. Email info@gullahgeecheecorridor.org. Telephone international 843-818-4587. The Motivator Show. Success is ours for the taking. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's free. Press the like button and don't forget to leave a comment. Follow us on Facebook. Give us the thumbs up and share with your family and friends. We are also on Instagram and TikTok. Follow us there too. You can listen to us on galaxyafui.net and also Mixcloud too. Until the next drum, I remain the motivator.